Good afternoon and a warm welcome to Bcaf, Bridging Culture and Art Foundation. Bcaf is a non-profit foundation that is working as a bridge between artists, communities, and urban population to create a sustainable ecosystem for arts, culture. We're very happy to start our first public appearance with renowned scholar, dancer, and associate professor Dr. Urmimala Sarkar Munsi. Before the beginning, I would request our Mr. Nadwan to say a few words about BCAF. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shravasti. It's my delight to introduce Bcaf, which is a not-for-profit organization best positioned to work for empowerment of marginalized communities. Bcaf runs a unique community leadership program to develop creative leaders in communities, creates a unique collaborative space for differently abled and queer artists, and it connects people from non-arts with arts. BCAF connects through honesty, inclusiveness, empowerment, collaboration, stewardship with and we have our stakeholders as marginalized communities, artists, performers, indigenous artists, and art enthusiasts. BCAF Community Leadership Program, we call it CLP, is one of our leadership main program. In this umbrella, we are working right now. We are starting the organization with the CLP program, and it aims to provide decent work, foster innovation, promote sustained and inclusive economic growth by building leadership and entrepreneurship within the communities. Community Leadership Program aims to engage with community for development of art practice and livelihood. Since BCAF will be working with the communities, it is paramount that as an organization, it also focuses on understanding the ethics to engage with the community in their practice, as there is always a struggle with the boundaries and roles of researchers and organizations while engaging with community. Under the BCAF Community Leadership Program, we are curating a series of sessions on ethics that should be practiced while working with communities. That's all from me. Over to you, Shabasti.
Thank you, ma'am. We are now moving to the session Understanding Ethics in Ethnographic Practice, which falls under our one of the main working areas that I'm already mentioned, Community Leadership Program. And it would be my pleasure to now introduce our speaker. Dr. Urmimala Sarkar Munsi is a faculty at the School of Arts and Aesthetics, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Her specialization is in critical dance studies, visual anthropology, and ethnographic research. She is a dancer, choreographer, trained at the Udashankar India Cultural Center. Her current work is on changing landscapes of dance in India, sex trafficking and survival process, performance of identity and citizenship in times of globalization and crisis in democracy, resisting neocolonization in writing dance. She was part of the Global Humanities Institute supported project Crisis of Democracy in 2018 to 2020. Dancing Modernity, Uday Shankar and his Transcultural Experimentations by Belgrave, March 2022. Alice Bonner Across Geographies and Arts, Alice Bonner Series 3 by Rijberg Museum, Zurich, 2021. And a chapter, Being Rama, Playing a God in the Changing Times, in Paul Richman and Rustam Barucha's edited Performing the Ramayana Tradition, Enactments, Interpretation, and Arguments are among her recent most publications. The session is live on BCAF YouTube channel. You can put your comments and questions over there. After the talk, we will be addressing as many as we can in the given time. Over to you, Urmidi.
Thank you very much, BCAF, especially the organizers, Rina, of course, and Shravasti, for calling me to be a part of this kind of first talk. I'm feeling very special. And unknowing or knowingly, you have actually put me in a place of my original passion. So, my position as an anthropologist and a visual anthropologist and an ethnographer had a very specific kind of focus. It was on performance. It was on performance in general, like this the way people live their everyday lives. People work out their responsibilities in society, but also very specific performance pedagogies such as dance and genres, dance, theater, and music, and interartistic genres, of course, that come out of all these. So I'm kind of placing myself in a place of passion, and I'm also trying to look at the training that I had, thanks to the Department of Anthropology in Calcutta University. And I would like to thank one person specifically here in the department, that is late Dr. Mr. Vishwanath Bandyopadhyay, and also the once upon a time Vice Chancellor of Vishwa Bharati, Professor Shurjit Chandra Sinha. Both were different kinds of anthropologists uh, who kind of existed in this world between hardcore theoretical thoughts, but also hardcore field work based empirical knowledge. So here I am. The first thing that I would do is I want to kind of share the screen, and I would like you to follow me through with the presentation. Through the presentation, it is going to be kind of a general thing. It is not going to be very theoretical here, but anybody who wants to read it or anybody who reaches out to BCAF later, we could actually share writings on this. So the share screen is being put on, and um, is it working, Shravasti?
Yes.
Okay. So being, becoming, working with people around us. So what do I even mean when why do I need to talk about being, becoming, or is it even being or becoming desirable, or can we really become somebody else or live somebody else's life? These are the questions that are going to be principle of paramount interest and and to think through whether this is possible or whether pretending that we are becoming for a while is good, or whether I can genuinely become a part of people. These are the questions that have plagued anthropology, ethnography, and human sciences, where the beginning was a problematic beginning, and the function that it was put into was a very problematic function, and that plagues us and the way we think even today. So the whole work of knowing not my culture but not somebody else's culture, oh how do they live, came from a certain kind of colonial endeavor that developed into a very specialized way of looking into other people's lives. Why was it necessary? Now, it was necessary principally, if I want to very shortly touch on the reason and the function that ethnography provided. Ethnography means, by the way, kind of learning and writing about other people. Ethnos is the community, and graphic is the way in which you kind of describe them. So the documentation, why did it start? Because the pockets of unknown communities were existent in all over India. The colonizers wanted to know about those people, how they work, what do they earn, what kind of lifestyle they have, so that they could actually establish connections within the far out areas where they would actually finally collect taxes. So this endeavor didn't start with this sole motive of collecting taxes, but also kind of was mixed with this idea of knowing people. And that started the kind of, first it was, of course, very many uh, colonizers, the white man, the white men who were reaching out. But then soon they found ways of depending on people who were from those areas, or people who were susceptible to kind of being available as people who would gather knowledge and then transfer those knowledge to the colonizers. And what was this knowledge? Now, this is that where we need to be very careful about understanding how knowledge is owned, in the sense that so the intention of knowing may be very genuine, but how do you know? Can you ever know what a community is doing by just seeing it? Or can you ever be the part of that community? So if you cannot, say, if you think you can, you are not really right. If you think you cannot, then what is the way to the best of our abilities to be ethical to our concerns of knowing and reaching out and doing community work? Secondly, what is our how do we correct ourselves? How do we where do we place ourselves in the work that we are so passionately wanting to do, and get results, or get results possibly by for both of us, that the people who are working, the people who are at the other end, and creating a kind of a sharing ecology where the persons who are going into these community spaces, as well as the members of the community, share a space where the knowledge can be at least put together by consent from both the sides. Now, what does consent mean then? Where, I mean, in a colonizer's world, would consent even matter? When does consent start mattering? And if consent matters about knowing about each other, then it should be a kind of a place where, for it first starts with saying that I don't know how to look. Help me learn how to understand. it is a it is a problem, because usually we come from a certain position of power when we are approaching the community. Firstly, I can write it down. So I am with this book, I am with a computer, I am with a camera, I will take note, I will take the camera photograph. So the person from the community is reduced to, very often reduced to, the person who is giving us information. I can take a photograph, I will put it where, and I will then take this back as something that now belongs to me. This knowledge, not the community, but at least the knowledge. And then that knowledge becomes something part of a writing of a book. So, what I'm trying to say here is that we have to first think, what are the problems that are going on? Like something that happens as a festival in a community, if I view it from how I have grown up seeing functions in my community. I see gender, I see caste, I see class, I see knowledge, I see sharing through how I define all these words in my community. There could be a very different way of sharing. So, if I suppose I am going and seeing that there is a very beautiful piece of chow dance going on somewhere, and I think that, oh, okay, these people are so skilled. Where did they learn? Which academy? I'm starting from a very wrong space, because I'm actually imposing the art of gathering skills from my perspective, because I have gone into a structured institution which is called a dance school. And whereas a community knowledge, in many cases in dance or music, even today, starts by living it, by kind of embodied memory of having been part of seeing that performance over and over and over again and again while growing up with adults, and then as responsible adults, and then in perhaps in the process wanting to be energized by that performance, wanting to learn. So practicing in places when where in unorganized, informal spaces, and after that, and the songs become memorized as a part of the community. So I am actually looking at a very different acquiring of knowledge, a very different system of knowledge imparted, and that is actually where that is where we start going wrong. Now, where is the what is this intention? Where is it documentation? Is documentation something that is different from a documentary? Here comes the question. So there's a question of ethic, and there's a question of choice. There's a question of self reflexivity, where I question myself, who am I? What am I going to do with this knowledge that I get? How am I going to, you know, kind of test whether I have actually gone and asked for that knowledge to be translated to me, and whether I am able to see the kind of knowledge that they are giving me. Because I may be actually kind of thinking, oh, I know all this. I know people dance and I know how to dance and I know those poses, postures. I have learned Kathakali, so I know how to sit in a square posture, basic positions in Kathakali. So I know how a chow body works. But is it possible to create any kind of knowledge just by seeing? Is the first question in terms of ethics. And that is where it becomes a very different task in documentation than a documentary, which could perhaps have these mixed methods of seeing and also having voices, but not a documentation where ethnographic documentation actually binds you in an unwritten contract that you will be trying to involve as many voices, as varied a voice, and you will be true to the process of unlearning constantly. So you will unlearn what you have carry in, as your knowledge bank, and which comes with you and with your body, and of a kind of a practitioner or a documenter or a academic. What you think you have known, that's not the final knowing. So unlearning comes basically as a part of the ethical practice. That is why this word is so important. You have to unlearn that I know. The third slide is about what is the real. Where is it? Is there a real? So, say for instance, I go to a physics lab. If there is a physics lab, if there is a prism, if there is a light source, and I am studying reflection, each time I have a certain angle the light is placed, I have that size of the prism. I do a certain that light has a strength, and I am doing the experiment. There could be very little other variant. So the result more or less would be the same. Whereas you cannot bring community lives under scanner. You cannot ask the community, oh, there was this, you have had a very, very bad experience with the last flood, or say Amphan. So, would you like to talk about that experience now? Or can you relive that terror so that I can understand what your terror was like? There's no reliving, redoing anything in human lives. Even things like a wedding. If you say that I will see a wedding, you have gotten married a few years back. I want to see what you do in the marriage. So, can you recreate that wedding scene in a lab situation, or even in the place where you got married. Is it possible to do it again? No. And even if something is possible, like say for instance, you go for a festival one year and you say, okay, I want to see it, how it changes over the years. So I will go every year. Would you find things as similar? There'll be a kind of a larger pattern of the festivity at best, but the same reenactments are very tough in community life. So you have to be careful about generalizing. What anthropologists and ethnographers did in older days, what was that they would actually talk about kind of sampling. They would talk about, okay, I will go there, I will see it through a month, or I will see it through a year. And then they would say, this community, and it is a present continuous. They work like this. Their calendar, ritual calendar is like this. So I am assuming that what I have seen over 1 year or 2 years is the general pattern. Now, nothing is a general pattern. And we cannot assume that in a year of COVID, that same general pattern will be repeated. Or if there is a flood, there's intense despair, uh, there's famine, there's war, people will be reacting the same in the same manner. What and or the election year for that matter. There could be very different kinds of money coming in for celebrations. So the whole character changes. So the real, you cannot generalize at any moment. You have to put a year and a space and the people so that you actually get up, you're actually creating a space and a time and the community reference which is specific for a particular occasion, and you're always held back by occasions. That's the kind of that year's maybe description. But have you seen the real at all? Now, say for instance, um, then what is the truth? Like say for instance, you have gone to a community and you have been told that I will take you to the schools, the primary schools. There are primary schools. You arrive and you see that they're quite well organized, very clean. There are at least a class full of kids, so 20 kids. And then you see there are teachers, they are well dressed, there is a blackboard, whatever. If you go back after some days, there may be nobody. There may be a very different picture you are seeing, or there could be a class full, very bustling life. So it can happen either way. It could be that the school had geared up for your visit for that particular day, because the community also would like to project what they imagine you want to see. And it can be right the other way. The day you have gone, you could see that the school compound is empty. There is nobody who is talking. There is nobody I can talk to. And I'm very disappointed. And I say that this school is, I mean, that this school doesn't exist. But why has it happened? Maybe there has been a very bad death in the village itself, or maybe there is something that is bothering the community, so the children have not come, or there is a festival in that village, so that most people have stayed away. So with the family, so the next day's festival can be celebrated together. So you see, the search for a truth cannot be ever arrived at so easily. Neither can the real be sought like that. How can you come close to the close to knowing the community? Is then that's something that we add again. That is, to this unlearning we add a kind of a repeated viewing, repeated knowing. So now I am saying that it's not only unlearning, but it is actually not a shortcut usually. So it is something that you test, you go back again, you ask multiple people in very many manners. You can actually create a space where you can test test out what you saw as something that did you see the did you actually were you able to understand what is happening, and that also always keep in mind that you will be seeing like in your manner. So when somebody you ask before traveling, before these websites were so active about telling you, oh, Bombay has 28 degrees max and 14 degrees minimum. 14 degrees is nice and comfortable weather, so you don't carry much woolen, and then you arrive and you see, oh my god, nights are very cold. So you see, each person when they tell you about their reality, it's a kind of an experiential thing to say. It's a very community based knowledge. It's a way in which people understand, and they are not lying. They are not making up. In that both can happen. One is that I will cater to you in in the way that I imagine you want me to cater to you. And it's always a human rationality, a human character that I will always assume. I will always try to presuppose, pre-understand what you want from me. How would I get the best of what you are giving? But before that, how would you be impressed with my community, or how you, if there is a lot of, sometimes you would like to, I would like to kind of enlarge my distress. Sometimes I would like to enlarge the happiness and the feeling of comfort. It's somewhere I would like to pretend that the women in my community don't get tortured. They have very good space. I would I would say they have voice. I would say, oh, there's no child abuse. I would say the things that I assume a good village should portray, and what you want to hear, or I would portray the otherwise if I think that that would be what you want to hear, or that would be something that would fetch a lot of things. Now the thing is that here the only way is to depend on many voices, create a kind of community within the community of knowledge sharing, and a kind of a building up of knowledge schemes where knowledge sharing becomes a kind of a give and take. So we create the kind of knowledge, the kind of knowledge banks slowly, as well as how we actually can go to the community and peg these important things so that our people, the outside, the so-called outsiders, and the insiders, the people from the community, can actually correct each other, or actually can feed into each other's knowledge banks. So knowledge is always something that humbly is shared. It's not about a hierarchy of knowledge. It's not that, oh, I know how to take, I am a trained field worker, so how I know how to do it, is what most of the field workers come across. I don't have time, जल्दी बोलिए, जल्दी जल्दी बात करिए, ये फॉर्म फिल अप कर दीजिए. Now what I won't expect of myself and my community in a city, I wouldn't expect, I wouldn't dare to go to somebody's house and say, without saying, okay, do you have time, or can I come back some other day, I would say कि ये form fill up कर दीजिए. लेकिन in a community space we assume that, okay, he is sitting outside, so he has time, so I will give the form, or I will sit down and say, can I take today, I have to do 30 forms, can you quickly tell me what to fill in the form. So these are things that we have to be very, very careful about. The thing that we have already started talking about is the hierarchy of knowledge. So the hierarchy of knowledge is a dangerous thing once again, uh, which I have been reiterating over and over again. That you can't be cautious enough to understand that you need to work also. It's not only that you are creating knowledge for the welfare of the community. You are doing this work, I am doing this work, I'm writing because I need that knowledge, because I need to write a book. So, for my knowledge, I'm actually doing something with them. In the process, maybe at some point or not, the not, community will gain. And it is something that humbles us very much. I mean, I have seen people getting angry with me when I say this, that you see, better get used to the fact that people understand that we are coming because we have a project that we have to carry out. And how does, and it works so long as you know that this is, there's a kind of a way in which I will be able to do the maximum for the project as well as the community, if only we can have a shared space of de-hierarchized. Hierarchy is human quality, human character, and basic human fault. So beyond that, each step has to be then monitored about hierarchy of knowledge, about unlearning. Learn again and again and again. I tell myself that here, oh, I am taking my knowledge for granted. I am taking my position for granted. And that therefore get into a mode where you constantly go through that cycle of knowing whether I am doing this work for, as I'm not doing anybody any favor. This is not about favor. It's about working for them and with them, because I have a project in which I want to do the work that I am excited by. And I want to do it for those people who actually would be able to really live it and give me back that feedback, which will again energize another project perhaps. And then that means that this while doing a work for the community, and community, this dreaded word welfare, I somewhere I think that this works both ways, because it is actually work for me and for the community. It's never mine over theirs. The other thing is that the one who sees and documents it, and the one who takes the middle path, and the one who understands subjectivity. There are different kinds. The one who lives it. So, say for instance, there are many instances in the past of people having traveled and living in a, who have lived in that particular society. A very kind of past past practice was to live years and years in the community. And actually, while we have criticized many of these endeavors in the current critical ethnography works, we know that it somewhere works, because you have been for a very long time in that community. You actually kind of get to a place where you you see a variety of things happening, and amongst that varieties there are things that get get crystallized as something that happens more regularly than others. And if I have been seeing that for say 1 year, or say even 6 months, or one cycle of calendar, so all year round, I actually have seen certain things happening in regularity, certain things happening in festive dates throughout. And I have actually been able to understand what is this knowledge, what is the knowledge that is given to the outsiders, and what is this inside world that is lived within the community. But also, I am able to understand that nobody can go and spend that kind of time. It was that other kind of time, other kind of space where people would go and live 3 years and then come out with one book. But whereas this is not about it. The community work needs a date. It survives, and it can be done only on the basis of a limitation, a kind of a use by or work by kind of date. And it also needs to be documented, and then it needs to be retold or assessed for the project itself. So therefore, the ways in which to the do away with the hierarchy of knowledge is to be able to work in tandem with the community. So there is a group of people who are working with the group of people who are going there. Never is it done planned alone. Never is it like, oh, I have this knowledge, I will give you. It is a kind of co-created space, a co-created workspace, a co-created knowledge space, a co-created a kind of listening space. The other thing is that, of course, the way in which one understands subjectivity. So there's this one thing that in ethnography it was constantly said that, oh, you have to be objective, you have to be outside, you can't get emotionally involved, you cannot be so. Say for instance, if there is child abuse, or if there is a severe delinquency in a child, in, in many children, or say substance abuse in a particular community. If we are talking about rehabilitation, we possibly could be having a lot of kind of what could be, it's a detestable word once again for me, but data, like what is it, that how many people, so what kind of substance, what kind of dependability, what kind of expenses does that mean for the family. And then you start getting emotionally involved in that project. So where and on the other hand, you have this thing, when you have gone to the field of stay objective, stay outside of the emotional boundaries, stay, only then can you do the work, only then can you. But what happens is, even at our objective base, we are human beings, we are women, we are sometimes men, we are children, we are sort of somebody's children, we are somebody's parents, we are members of communities who have other kind of concerns which reflects on our mind. So it's best to put your subjectivities at test. So what do? You actually don't claim objectivity. Oh, I will stay objective. Test your objectivity. Be subjective. Say in the beginning, oh, I'm a mother. I can't actually look at those kids in a juvenile delinquency a juvenile home, and I cannot be unemotional, and I will have a kind of space where I get emotional. So if you once you do that, and you have other people who are coming from different kinds of spaces, there's a way in which you can create a place where multiple voices, multiple visions, multiple seeings are happening, and in that your subjectivity would add strength, not weakness. It will become a strength where, or say, for instance, I have a history of being abused. And in that, if I go to the community and if I'm working with women who are recovering from abuse, a safety of a home, a kind of government home or something, when I go, I already know that my PTSD, chances of getting PTSD is triggering. So it may trigger at any point. It's best not to pretend that I don't have it. It's best to be the vulnerable observer. So there is a book which is called The Vulnerable Observer by Ruth Behar, who talks about this, how always, we think that the observer is objective. The observer is always strong. The observer is trained to be strong. The observer is trained to take data and, look at informants' lives and then, get the information and come back and, put into this grids and excels and whatever, and then do a statistical analysis and then, produce, or possibly create a kind of space of discussions or whatever it is. However, this is always a kind of subjective space. You will react as a gendered person, number one, when you are going into that kind of a space. You will be very class specific in your seeing. You will be very, because many a things we have not experienced as members of very kind of advantaged classes or castes. As higher caste people, as higher class people, we are coming from a certain kinds of space of advantage, of cultural and social capital. And that is why we need to be conscious that I will do things very consciously, being conscious of my subjective position. What are the things that I'm going to get wrong because I don't know about that? I have not lived with that community. I have not been a part of those disadvantages while I have grown up. So my my talk is about knowing that I don't know some things, but for knowing newly, new knowledge, new ecologies, going into new ecologies, the best thing, the most humbling thing is that you can go on learning and you can actually be the subjective learner where your share as the community shares their knowledge and you share your expertise or knowledge, there comes a space where you co-create an environment of knowledge sharing, and that is where the community work starts. So I would like, in the last, I think 6 minutes of my sharing, I would like to go to the next and the last slide. And I want to say that unlearning is the new learning then today, because I don't know everything is the first thing. And this doesn't come easy. Let me give you an example. I have grown up going time and again to certain kinds of spaces from anthropology, doing anthropology from undergraduation, and living in, like I said, the name of Professor Vishwanath uh, Bhattacharya. So Vishwanath Bandyopadhyay. So he was a mentor, and the day we went, he first thing he said was that you know be ready to understand that what you are seeing is just one way of seeing and this one way of doing. So each day, each time over the years, if you come back to the same space, there'll be another way of seeing, another way of doing that are coming together. So you will be viewing newly and they will be doing new. And it actually worked for me in very different manners, even in my performance life. I have actually learned that I I've learned to look at ways in which people see characters. And I have actually learned that it's not a performance that they are seeing sometimes. I have done, characters which are of national, somewhere it holds importance. The characters of gods that you perform in, like Ram. I have done the role of Ram for almost like 25 years exactly, more than 25 years. And when I stopped, it was 2000. 6, I think, yes. And you can understand that this whole period of having done um, Ram over and over and over again, I've encountered new audiences. Some places the audience would not see me as a woman who is doing who is doing Ram. Because I was dressed as Ram, I was actually taken as Ram. And when even in some places I've seen that they would be actually looking at me dancing, and then the next day, when I'm not wearing those costumes, I'm taken as Ram, and people would fall on my feet. I'm wearing a sari. I'm completely a woman, but it doesn't matter. It actually is a certain kind of seeing. It's a certain kind of being. And all of them are true. If I say that I know how many ways in which people see Ram or any of the godly characters, I don't know anything, even after 25 years of having received those kinds of viewings. You see? So, how would it be possible? Is it even possible for people to know what happens every time something recurs? So, say for instance, this is one of the learnings also of the pandemic times, I would say. I would finish with this observation that the communities that we have gone to work with have evolved over the years and waves of COVID. In the first wave and in the times till the Amphan, there was this whole vulnerability and absolute helplessness and dying without knowing what to do, right? The community has not stayed in the same place. You see now the other end of the spectrum where many people have had COVID, many people have been vaccinated. There are deep distrusts about vaccine processing among some, but most will actually acknowledge at least that if there is vaccine, the attack is not that much. So this change, if you don't see over time, how does it even make sense to us? It doesn't. We can't say once after seeing the first wave that I know what the population wants and I know what we have to do. Yes, we know. At that particular point, possibly we are trying to know and we are getting close to knowing. But while we are getting close to knowing, the second wave, with the second wave, comes up totally, completely uncontrolled number of deaths, which is kind of exploding into our face. And we have to then and there get prepared to do something new in the community. And therefore, the whole act, the whole responsibility changes, whole structure changes. And so I leave you with these thoughts, and there are ample things which you could read. Some of them are too kind of academic, so but some of them are kind of descriptive, and I can try and find out interesting things which could be then probably be shared amongst you. And I hope you have enjoyed. I will stop sharing now. I'll go back to the principal screen only if I can. Okay. So, and thank you once again. And I kind of feel advantaged that I went on talking, and if you like it or not, I couldn't care less. That's a very bad ethnographer trait. I need to care about what you guys thought. So, if you have questions, please go ahead. Thank you. Shravasti, I'm over with it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. While listening, there are many thoughts that came in my mind. I'm sure to the audience as well. But one question that I wanted to ask you at that moment, that we talk about um, intellectual property right often. So in community art project, what do you suggest that the IP rights belong to whom? To the community or the researcher? So what is the definition of IP right in that case?
As a ethnographer, I straight away say it's the community's rights, that the community has the rights, because you see, the community rights do not get kind of etched in stone at all. Other than, I mean, they don't need to, because community lives the life, community lives the performance, and it holds the right to change the performance as is. So if it's election time, for example, they will sing new songs if they want to sing new songs, and if they want to create new characters and new places that they would like to perform, it's their freedom. But if you want to freeze whatever knowledge systems that you have through that, whatever data you've acquired, it is something that one must decide with the community together as to what kinds of rights you hold, in the sense that if the community is okay with this being dated in a kind of a particular space specific, time specific, and community specific kind of performance with names and acknowledgements the way that they want you to have, then it actually belongs to that particular performance of that particular time. If suppose there is a workshop where knowledge exchange is happening, the way to go is to decide with the community what kind of and giving the community a chance to understand what are the options of giving you the rights. You see, so it's an open process. If the community thinks that, I don't care, we do it every year so many times, go ahead and do it. ठीक है हमारा नाम दे देना. But otherwise, it could say that, no, we want it to be, this is just a one off performance we did, and we don't want to have it projected. Then you will have to deal with it. And this has to be done before you go into recording of any sort. And there could
Um,
be, you have to have a space that there could be change of mind in the community several times.
yeah. My next question is, we talked about ethnography practice, we talked about researcher, but also, like in our cases, when we go as a foundation or as an organization, so there is also a tendency that our organization has a certain vision of of helping or changing or uplifting skills and development. So what is the process of negotiating that?
It's very simple in my mind. In my mind, it is something that has to be decided together. Does the community need this model, that module that we have for a kind of a development? If not, then what does the community want in it? Does it make sense to the community? So, in many cases, such projects are made jointly, in the sense that before you create a project, you create it with voices from the community. And the other thing could be that if you are doing it across communities, say for instance in one community, say like a government home or something, if you are doing a dance project or a kind of well-being project there, or a kind of a formal school education introduction, like the bridge between informal education that exists, and a kind of bridge between for the youngsters to have a formal education, being ready for a formal institution. What is it exactly that the community wants? Where is it lacking? That particular project has to shape up with the talks. I know it's easier said than done, but if you are doing different kinds of communities, each community will have different kinds of in or you could actually have a kind of a structure to this whole thing, and then go and give them that structure and say that if that this works with you, we would like to do this, and this. So it has to be decided together, because otherwise Even if you have a grand project, it might not succeed. Yeah.
Um, my next question is on that line only. So, this constant going back to the community, this constant uh, different kind of workshops or training process. Um, is there also a possibility that a community can deroot from their traditional or original practice?
See, this is a very, very interesting question because a lot of our efforts have seen that happen exactly to the community. In all our very passionate engagement, we have actually created things because because that's something that has happened as an external force. We don't even know what would have happened if that particular project didn't take place. Like, for example, I'll tell you, the United Nations Intangible Cultural Heritage Program, Masterpiece Program. Masterpieces are very specific, right? It's not just the intangible cultural heritage. Masterpieces are pieces which have survived changes, which have generated changes within itself, within the community, at how the arts are looked at, how what will keep it alive. And without or with external influences, they have actually shaped their more recent kind of avatars, if you will, the way in which it has evolved. But the thing is that has that changed the community practice? Yes, because masterpiece, being an UN masterpiece, means that you have gotten a different kind of support, visibility in the sites, and certain kinds of advantages, though not many. And expectations, though expectations are not met, it is much better than before in terms of how visibility has occurred for that particular forum. So the thing is that one thing that is certain in all this is that change is the most constant factor in life, with or without our intervention. But what I am saying is that in an ecology, to be not conscious of what I could create as a havoc almost of a barrage of things that I am saying would be good for you needs to be decided with the community, because I could say that, oh, you abandon all these kinds of dresses, make a grammar. So that has also happened, right? In the classical dances, people from outside have gone and said, no, you have to have 5 piece costume like Bharatanatyam, and then only you will become a classical dance. And because they wanted it to become a classical dance, they actually changed themselves to it. So where was it good for the performers? What was the origin? Who knows? I don't know. Nobody knows because it has changed, right? And over the years, it has created a deeply resentful people who have been left out of all this. And the exploitations have actually affected mostly women. So we could act, the best thing is to be able to uh, plan with the community so that it is co-created. Any plan has a kind of the stakeholders, and using another word I don't like, but even then, and saying that, if the stakeholders who are there, the community with and the people who have the project, maybe come together and decide together what they want to do to their future, the change would happen anyway. Maybe the community would disappear. That particular performance would disappear. So nobody can tell if this intervention doesn't happen, what will happen. But while the intervention is being planned, the community has to say that, do we want it? What do we see our future as? Then it becomes quite easy. You understand that, see, I don't know what you want, but I can be there for you to want it. I mean, that freedom to want can be charged by our interventions. facilitations. Yeah,
Thank you so much, and I'm very sure that it left us with many thoughts that can be addressed in our following sessions. Thank you, Urmidi, for being here with us, and thank you all for joining us in our upcoming sessions. Please follow
thank
our
you. Thank you very much for giving me the.
yeah Facebook and Instagram page. Urmidi, you want to say something?
No, I'm just saying the thank you to BCAF because it was like something that I would dream of talking about. So thanks.
Thank you so much. This session will be available on BCAF's YouTube channel, which you can access at any point. A very good afternoon once again. Thank you.
Thanks. Will you send me the link?